you want to talk about surcharging?
Yes.
You tell me what you know about surcharging, and I'll tell you everything I know.
It is in hot demand.
Okay, hot demand what?
Oh, I think 3 out of 5 of our customers is asking how to put that charge back on.
Is it because they're hearing from an independent sales agent that's coming in and said, this is the way to make it more effective, or what? No.
It's because they're seeing those businesses are putting their own little labeling in the front thing and are making their own rules about not charging. And so they're like, oh, how can I do that too? And we're like, no, that's not the legal way to do it.
And they don't want to raise their prices.
Yes.
I get it. Okay, don't want to raise prices. See others. What other trends are you seeing out there?
I would agree with 3 to 5. I think that from what I'm seeing from partners calling me saying, hey, what can FiNet do? We had a couple of partners in a state north of us that, they had a group go in and basically go door to door offering, 4% free equipment. And hey, if I'm a merchant and I don't have fees, I got to pay $30 a month. You give me a piece of equipment, okay. But we know better. Are they being truthful? Are they giving all the information? Probably not. Some of the customers that are coming to us saying, here's what I have, here's how I'm doing it now. We know it's not being done properly within the rules.
Everybody complies, by the way. They all do
Yeah,
that.
100%.
I have a surcharge compliant program. I'm like, who certified that? Because we don't.
The sticker on the front of your machine is doing that for you.
I saw one in Georgia recently that they had they surcharged all their cards, including debit, and I didn't push them on it, but they tried to legitimize it with this big old sign. I'm like, really? Because I'm probably not going to come back here because I can go to any other bakery in my town and I don't pay them. Okay, so all right, any other trends?
Well, here's my question. What happens to them if they are doing it illegally? I mean, we put the fear of God in ours. Don't do it.
Illegal,
Don't ask,
okay.
don't do it.
Yeah.
Like, not okay. But what happens if, and who is it that actually busts them or enforces that or?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just like, don't do it. Don't.
All right, good. Do you guys know kind of the difference between surcharging, cash discounting, and convenience fees? You ever heard those terms? Everybody knows surcharging, right? Surcharging, you all know, came out as a result of Durbin. There was and the merchant lawsuit. The merchants, the large merchants, wanted the ability to surcharge, which, ironically enough, was pretty commonplace over in Europe already, right? But there's other operating dynamics of Europe that make the United States not the same. And so, in order to resolve it, surcharging in the merchant lawsuit, we agreed that we allow surcharging on credit only. Also related to Durbin, it's not allowed on signature debit cards or offline debit, whatever you want to call it, because of the reduction in interchange. So a lot of people confuse that of, they think, if you actually read, it's right here, I got it. It talks about credit. You can only surcharge credit, right? And that there's a maximum that we publish is the Mastercard, right? Visa does the same, that there is the maximum allowed rate. That doesn't incorporate core merchant services. It's our interchange rates are what they're supposed to surcharge on. Cash discounting was something that actually grew out of the petroleum business, right? We still see it today. They'll go up you 2 or 3 cents off a gallon if you pay cash. And so as part of this whole activity, you're allowed to be able to cash discount, right? So you can do that across the board. Convenience fees is the one that probably gets most confused, right? Convenience fee rules have been out there at Mastercard for forever. At one point in time, some folks at Mastercard tried to make it about certain categories of merchants are allowed to do cash convenience fees. But if you look at it, if you're going to do a convenience fee, it has to apply to all payment types within that particular payment mode. Okay? So if you're going to charge a convenience fee, and you, like my favorite example, the Arizona Department of Motor Vehicles, and you go to a kiosk, they'll add a convenience fee for the use of that kiosk, because they're only taking cards. So they're going to apply convenience fees to cards. But if I do it at a retailer and I'm going to add a convenience fee on that, if I accept cash, if I accept checks, then theoretically it applies to all those. So that was the nomenclature to go, look, it's a true convenience that I'm offering the consumer by the way that it's being able to be accepted. Now, and I'll leave these with you too, by the way, because I cut out the excerpts. When it comes to these discounts, there's things like bona fide commissions, postage and expedited things that can be included in that, but I'm only talking about a true convenience fee for the way to be able to do it. So back to the challenge that you point to, what's illegal is, just because somebody's put it in, or just because an ISO said that they does it, doesn't mean that it's compliant with the rules, okay? And when it comes to enforcement, we set our rules, but it's very, very clear that the licensees, whether it's an issuer or it's an acquirer, are responsible for enforcing those rules. They turn around and go, hey, but FiNet's the entity that's below us, they're responsible. And by the way, the merchant agreement always says they need to follow Mastercard and Visa's rules. So the long answer to that is, it should be being self-policed. We don't have the resources at Mastercard. I'm not saying I agree with it, nor does Visa. You know, as a franchisor, I think we lost our ability to really able to enforce it. So what the merchant runs the risk is somebody actually does file a complaint about that, and it gets reported to Mastercard, because we do get violations reported. Then they run the risk of a potential fine. Depending upon, we have 3 or 4 classes of fines, you can find up to $250,000, right? But nobody's out actively policing it, so it becomes the crux of how do you work with your merchants to help them understand what it is they can and they can't do, right? And try to work within what you guys have if somebody truly wants to do it. I'm not a fan personally of surcharging, and it just simply comes down to, and we've all heard the arguments, is costs go up in businesses every day, right? People like to pick on cards because it's so publicly out there. Thank you, regulators. Thank you, legislators. Thank you for the lobby groups that try to put it on as a hidden tax. Electricity isn't a hidden tax. Interchange rates are published. They're out there, so it's not hidden. It's a cost of doing business, right? Consumers want to use cards, and there's a cost. We could all debate as to what goes into interchange, whether it's right or not, but I just don't fundamentally think that you're going to surcharge your customers because your phone bill came up. You're not going to surcharge your customers because your lease payment just went more. It's a fact of doing business. So when you put in what your retail price is going to be, it should factor in all the cost. You shouldn't separate line items to be able to do it, right? Because eventually there'll be consumer backlash. Eventually, you know, why the regulators today are all pro, well, these merchants and the hidden tax, eventually, remember, consumers are their constituents too. And when consumers start to see these egregious fees that are out there, yeah, they come to the payment companies and make it about us and make it about interchange, but you'll start to see the tide switch to go, why is it we're surcharging everything from that standpoint? I'd love to tell a merchant, look, you run the risk of you're going to lose customers if you surcharge. Some of them don't really give a crap. They don't fundamentally give a crap, or they wouldn't be putting it out there in the first place. And so I don't think you're ever going to change and sway their mind away who's dead set. I mean, just being very truthful, who's dead set in surcharging. But what you can do is you can help educate them on the right way to do it, as opposed to somebody who's just coming in and selling it. So I don't, it's probably not what you probably wanted, a more silver bullet. I don't have a silver bullet, other than just make sure that you take the upper road and that you educate them on what is in the rules. And look, our rules are online. These things are out there, so I have no problem with, I just took an excerpt of the rules that kind of cover all these topics. Show them our rules. This is what the rules are.
So we have variations of these programs.
You do it right?
Yes, it's being recorded. No, absolutely. And the beauty, obviously, of the partnership is, and you've heard me say this before, we treat your customers as if they're our customers. We are the same size. We're a local company. We see them at the football games. We're not going to do anything to your customers that we wouldn't want done to ourselves. The issue lies within that, though, because there's enough out there that is, this is how you do it. Hey, I got 4% free terminal, this, and using your debit card, you still get that 4% charge. That's not something we're going to do. So when we have the conversation about surcharging, it's, are we looking at a convenience fee model? Are we looking at a surcharging model? What are we trying to do? There's also some things that came out recently, and Jeff, I don't know Mastercard stance because I didn't see anything yet. Visa announced that they're lowering the max threshold from 4% to 3%. I can't knowingly put somebody at 4 knowing that it's already out there that we're thinking about coming off that. So you may then hear, well, FiNet's not willing to work with me, or FiNet doesn't have this program. Again, at the end of the day, if we go down the road of some of these other ISOs that aren't giving everybody all the information or aren't setting up according to the regulations, and they're very straightforward, do this, don't do that, it's a reflection on you, right? Because my bank gave me this program. Yeah, it's FiNet and the third party, but the bank did. And nobody wants that conversation. So I would rather have the more painful conversation up front of, okay, we're going to be in a surcharge scenario. This is what the program is. This is how we're going to operate. You're going to have signage here, here, and here. You're going to have a program that splits out the receipt that says your $100 transaction for goods sold, 3% charge at the bottom, 2 separate fees, 2 separate dollar amounts, and the reporting is so on. You're not going to have the ability to do it on debit. And oh, by the way, because we're on this program, and it's a flat rate program, 3% or $3.50, whatever it is, you're now paying $3.50 on debit card transactions that you should be paying, not $3.50, right?
Total cost?
Total cost, right.
Cost would be 5 basis points and 20%.
Right, I mean, so huge difference. So if you're a business, let's say you're a convenience store, high transaction total on a monthly basis, low dollar amount. Well, now all of a sudden, convenience fee, surcharge. I don't want any fees. Well, again, if we're doing it the right way, and 65 or 70% of my business is a debit card, I'm not paying more than I did by charging a surcharge than I was on a standard account. So those are conversations that we're gonna have that aren't just easy, here's your terminal, 175 and 25, like I started 20 years ago, or as Asa said back when Moses parted the sea. It's not that simple. Debbie loves having these conversations with merchants. Monday and Tuesday, we had 3 or 4 of them. And it's confusing for them. If it's confusing for us, for what we see out in the market, imagine what it's like for customers that it's out there, I want to do it. And we're trying to explain to them. I mean, we were going back and forth with one lady who thinks she's getting double charged. Which I don't know how she was coming to that conclusion, because there was no way, half of it she wasn't even being charged once. And on the debit side, I think she finally realized she was paying more than she should have, but it's a confusing time. There's a lot of bad information out there.
Fundamental. The surcharge settlement aspect of it applied to Mastercard and Visa's interchange rates on credit. The maximum amount is on credit. It does not and was never intended to be on core merchant service discount fees. And that is a very clear distinction you need to make, is that's what we agreed to. There was never an agreement that merchants could surcharge away all merchant discount. And I'll go double check, because at one point in time, you were prohibited, and I have to see if it's there, that you cannot assess the merchant discount fee to consumers. Okay, so I'll go confirm with all this that it's in there. It won't take me long to be able to figure it out, but that is the distinction is, in Ron, is just go out and get the max surcharge and go, this is what MasterCard publishes and this is what Visa publishes. That's what the surcharge program is about. So if somebody's coming in and trying to say offsetting all that, That's not what is allowed by our program. So we'll allow you to surcharge up to the max of our credit interchange.
And the flip side is what Jeff brought up earlier to, it was either Ashley or Emily's question, the policing of it, right? So, okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna put it at 4%. I'm gonna surcharge every card type. Okay, Ron calls and complains, makes it through the funnel, you get a warning, right? So how, we have to go through how many of those? So again, my view on it, and I think our view as an office is, I'm just not willing to put your customers in that situation. Much like we've had conversations on restricted and prohibited merchants. If you don't want to bank them, you're not sending them to us for merchant accounts. There are some differences. We view restaurants differently than you guys view restaurants from a loan standpoint. Restaurants generally, up until recently, have been one of the easiest type of businesses to get approved, low chargeback rate. Maybe not so much anymore, but so there's differences there. But again, at the end of the day, what we're going out with and what we're trying to do for your customers is we're going to be within the lines there. We have to be. So, maybe ask for a little bit of leeway if we have customers that are calling to play, hey, your partner isn't working with us, I can go down the street and Charlie's offering this all day long. But at the end of the day, I don't know that we want to be in bed with Charlie. But it is, again, it's a new scenario, completely different application process, so it takes time. And then obviously there's the conversation of making sure the customer understands what they can and can't do.
I'm just glad to know why Ticketmaster can take such advantage of me all the time. Now I get it.
Yep.
And they've always had that as a convenience fee.
Yeah.
They've always done it.
Yep. All that kind of makes sense? Somewhat makes sense? Any other questions in regards to that?
So how does the QuickBooks, like Intuit program work? You see a lot of customers that like Intuit and QuickBooks or Sage because when it's included in their package, they pay for their accounting software. But when they send a payment, there's a 3% fee. I think some of them believe that 3% is like included in their packaging. Is there different regulations when it comes to like an added on product to a QuickBooking, like accounting software? Because you're seeing more and more of Intuit and Sage offering ACH invoicing or credit card payments where they do that, and it's basically an over the phone type of charge, but it's a flat rate fee similar to Square. But our customers generally think that interchange is different than regular Mastercard or Visa.
I'm not aware of anything. that
It's still
would-
the same.
Yeah, still would apply from that standpoint. It's a frustrating topic. It's a frustrating topic. For me, from a rules standpoint, I get very, very frustrated, right? Because you harm the consumer at the end of the day, who just wants to simply pay for goods, products, and services, and they don't want to go through the hassle. And why would you give up a lifetime of transactions just to make back some cost, right? It's just silly. It's the same thing when people do mins and maxes, right? You have a minimum transaction amount, so you don't care about their long-term business. They're going to walk away and go to someplace else. But business owners are entitled to think whatever they want, and we can only educate them as to what the realities are, and then they have to make their own decision as to whether they want to go with their trusted provider, which is their banking partner, or go with somebody who's off the street just peddling the program that they did.
Yeah, that's a good point. So the last two things I have for the topic would be continuing the education with the customer. What are we doing to the consumer, right? Just not going back to his bakery because they added a fee. When I was in Connecticut in the fall, same thing. A deli guy had been going to for 25 years, added a 3.5% fee. He says, love the food, not going back on principle. So it's a conversation with the customer about, is this really what you want to do? What's the benefit here? And then the side note that was brought up to me by one of our processors, Debbie and I were on a call, and it never really occurred to me. So, simple math, we did $100,000 in processing for the year, and our fees are $2,500. We get to write that off cost of doing business, we pay tax on $97.5. Well now, and we're just gonna assume it's all credit at this point, we had 3%, we had 4% to that. Well, now we're not writing anything off because we didn't have any credit card fees, right? and we're paying taxes on money collected. Because even though that 4% isn't being paid for by merchant fees, it's still money coming in. So it's now a tax swing in that particular, almost $7,000. Now, $100,000 okay, one thing, but nobody's having that conversation. So it's conversations that we're going to have with the customer to give them all of it. Here's where it starts, here's where you have to be in the lines, and oh, by the way, these are things, Les, you probably need to think about if this is something we really do, especially the debit to credit ratio. Because if your debit ratio is half of your business, you really have to look at that because of the added expense.